It was a small community talk I gave on a Sunday morning, one of those informal, sit-down gatherings in a modest hall behind a local church. The chairs were metal, the coffee was lukewarm, and the crowd was mostly quiet. Folks in their 60s, 70s, some older. They came for gentlemen's health, or so the flyer said. But by the time I brought up the word masturbation, you could have heard a pin drop. One man even shifted in his seat so hard the leg of his chair squeaked across the floor. That's when I knew I had touched a nerve no one talks about, but everyone feels. It wasn't anger I saw on their faces. It wasn't disgust. It was reluctant curiosity. A mixture of surprise and relief. Because the truth is, people in their golden years aren't uncomfortable with sexuality. They're uncomfortable with the silence that has surrounded it for most of their lives. And masturbation? That's the deepest layer of that silence. A subject treated with such shame, secrecy, and taboo that even now, at a time in life where health and wholeness should take center stage, it remains locked behind closed doors. But here's what I told them, and what I'm going to tell you now: this silence is hurting us. Not just emotionally, but physically. Not just individually, but collectively. Because every time we avoid talking about self-pleasure, we reinforce the idea that aging means losing connection. And I can't think of anything more untrue, or more dangerous, than that. I've worked with thousands of older adults, and what I've come to realize is this: masturbation after 60 isn't about fantasy. It isn't about chasing lost youth. It's about connection. To your body. To your health. To your sense of identity. And when we don't talk about it, we don't just miss out on intimacy, we miss out on healing. One woman in the group, a widow in her late 70s, raised her hand quietly after a long pause. "Do you really think it's okay to, still want that?" Her voice trembled on the last word. I looked her right in the eyes and said, "Not only is it okay, it's essential." And that's what today's conversation is really about. Not just the act itself, but the right to speak it aloud. The right to reclaim it from the shadows. Because the longer we keep it in the dark, the longer we stay disconnected from one of the simplest, most powerful tools we have for emotional and physical vitality. Let's start with why the taboo exists. For many of us, masturbation was something discovered early, often in secret, usually with a rush of guilt. No one explained it. No one normalized it. Instead, it was something to be hidden, something dirty. And those early messages took root. Over time, they hardened into beliefs. Beliefs that pleasure was private, shameful, immature. That as we aged, we were supposed to grow out of it. But here's the truth: you don't grow out of needing comfort. You don't grow out of needing touch. And you certainly don't grow out of needing a safe, private way to connect with yourself, especially when other forms of connection become harder to access. I had a patient named Harold, 68, recently divorced, living alone for the first time in decades. He came to me because he wasn't sleeping well. He felt tense, anxious, and detached. We ran the tests. Everything looked fine. But as we sat and talked longer, he admitted something almost in a whisper. "I haven't touched myself since the divorce. It just felt wrong. Like something I shouldn't do at my age." I asked him why. "Because I'm not a teenager anymore," he said. "That's the myth we need to break. That masturbation is something only young men do. That after a certain age, you're supposed to become neutral. Numb. Disconnected. But that couldn't be further from what your body actually wants and needs. Because physiologically, self-pleasure provides far more than just release. It reduces cortisol, your main stress hormone. It improves sleep quality. It boosts mood, increases circulation, strengthens the pelvic floor, and even supports immune health. These aren't side effects. These are essential functions for longevity. And yet, we're too embarrassed to talk about it. When I encouraged Harold to reconsider, not as something dirty, but as something restorative, he was skeptical. But a few weeks later, he returned with a different posture. He was sleeping again. His mood had improved. And more importantly, he no longer felt like a stranger in his own body. It wasn't about sex, he told me. It was about coming back to myself. That sentence has stayed with me for years. Because that's what masturbation can become at this stage of life, not just a routine, but a ritual. A moment of peace. A soft reminder that your body is still here. That sensation still exists. That even in silence, even in solitude, you are still a man. Still worthy of touch. Still capable of feeling. But to get there, we have to break the silence. We have to start having these conversations, not just with doctors, but with friends. With partners. With ourselves. And not in whispers, but with clarity and confidence. Because what we don't talk about becomes something we hide. And what we hide becomes something we shame. And shame, especially in older adults, is a poison. It isolates. It depresses. It convinces you that your needs are no longer valid. And that is simply not true. In part 2 of this video, I'm going to walk you deeper into the science of why masturbation matters for seniors, not just physically, but neurologically and emotionally. I'll show you how touch supports brain health, how regular sexual activity, even solo, lowers your risk of certain chronic conditions, and why reclaiming this part of your life can help restore more than your libido. It can restore your presence. So stay with me. Because what comes next isn't just a deeper conversation, it's a necessary one. And you deserve to hear it, without shame, without judgment, and without apology. When we left off, I promised you something deeper, not just a conversation about breaking silence, but a real look into the science behind why this part of your health matters more than most people realize. And I want to say this again, because it bears repeating, the need for pleasure, the need for release, the need for connection, it doesn't fade with age. It simply waits for you to stop ignoring it. I once had a couple in their early 70s, Tom and Evelyn, who had been married for almost 50 years. They came to see me for general wellness, but by the second visit, Evelyn pulled me aside. She said, "Tom's been more quiet lately. He doesn't laugh as much. He sleeps more during the day. But what worries me most is, he stopped wanting to be touched. Not just sexually, at all. It's like he's slowly disappearing into himself." And when I asked Tom how he'd been feeling, he didn't talk about his joints, or fatigue, or cholesterol. He looked me straight in the eyes and said, "I feel invisible. Like a piece of furniture in my own house." That hit me hard. Because I've heard that before. And I know it's not about attention. It's about connection. It's about the silent erosion of identity that happens when no one touches you, no one looks at you with curiosity, and, worst of all, you stop touching yourself. You stop showing up in your own body. What Tom didn't realize, and what most men his age are never told, is that this disconnection from self isn't inevitable. It's reversible. And one of the most immediate, accessible ways to reverse it is through intentional, regular self-pleasure. Let's unpack the biology of that. Your skin is your largest organ, and it's full of nerve endings designed to send signals to the brain, not just about pain or temperature, but about comfort, safety, pleasure. When you engage in masturbation, those nerve endings come alive. They stimulate the release of a cocktail of neurochemicals, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, endorphins. These aren't just feel-good molecules. They are the foundation of emotional stability, stress relief, and even immune function. Dopamine enhances motivation. Serotonin supports mood regulation. Oxytocin fosters a sense of bonding and reduces anxiety. Endorphins block pain and induce calm. This is not a theory, this is fact. Your body has built-in mechanisms for healing emotional wounds. And many of them are activated during the process of self-touch, arousal, and climax. But it doesn't stop there. The act of masturbation also supports neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to adapt and create new pathways. Every time you experience pleasure, your brain is reminded that life still has moments of joy, even in solitude. That reminder is essential, especially for seniors who are battling grief, change, or the loss of long-time relationships. And if you're thinking, but what if I don't feel the same way I used to? What if my body doesn't respond? Let me tell you something I've said to dozens of men sitting across from me with the same concern. You don't need to feel exactly the same. You just need to start feeling again. It might take time. Your arousal might be slower. Your climax might be less intense, but the presence you bring to the moment, that's where the healing begins. And when you stop chasing a result and instead focus on the process, your body begins to relax, to trust, to engage again. This is where emotional resilience is built. Touch, especially consistent, intentional touch, tells your nervous system that the world is safe again, that you're not under threat, that it's okay to stop bracing. And that shift has enormous ripple effects. Blood pressure lowers, breathing slows, inflammation decreases, sleep improves, and most importantly, you begin to like being in your own body again. I had another patient, Richard, a retired high school teacher, who came to me after losing his wife. He told me that he hadn't touched himself in over 5 years. Not because he didn't want to, but because he felt like it would somehow dishonor her memory. I listened. I acknowledged the pain. And then I asked him a simple question. If she were here now, would she want you to live the rest of your life disconnected from yourself? His eyes welled up. He shook his head. And in that moment, something shifted. A few months later, he came back. He told me he had started again, not with guilt, but with gentleness. He said, "I don't feel ashamed anymore. I feel human again." And that, right there, is the core of what we're talking about. Masturbation in your 60s, 70s, and beyond isn't a habit left over from youth. It's a form of healthcare. It's an act of agency. It's a small, powerful way to say, I still matter. My body still matters. But to keep this practice sustainable, it needs to come from a place of self-compassion, not performance. That means no deadlines, no pressure, no rigid routines. Just a commitment to return to yourself regularly. To check in. To create space. To honor your own needs. And if you're in a relationship, talk about it. Share this video with your partner. Use it as a doorway into a conversation that might have felt too awkward before. You'd be surprised how many couples rekindle intimacy not in spite of solo touch, but because of it. Because it brings down walls. It builds confidence. It opens communication. And if you're single, know this, your pleasure is not a substitute for partnership. It's preparation for deeper connection, with others, with yourself, and with the life that's still unfolding ahead of you. Because this conversation isn't just about the body. It's about identity, dignity, presence. And in part 3, I'll walk you through how to begin having these conversations, with your peers, with your children, even with your doctor. I'll show you how your openness can become a gift to others. How breaking this silence can ripple outward into your community, your friendships, and perhaps most importantly, into your own sense of wholeness. So stay with me. Because the final chapter isn't about explanation, it's about liberation. And you, my friend, have earned the right to speak freely, live fully, and feel deeply. Starting now. So here we are, at the part of the journey where information becomes transformation. Where silence gives way to speech, and where the most personal truth becomes the most powerful. You've heard the science. You've heard the stories. But now I want to take this one step further, because the real power in talking about masturbation openly after 60 isn't just about you. It's about us. All of us. A generation of men and women who are tired of pretending that aging means fading. Who are ready to live with their whole selves intact, including the parts long silenced by shame, by stigma, or by simply not having the words. And let me start here, with something very few people say to older adults: you are still a sexual being. Not in the way Hollywood defines it. Not in a way that has to look like anything from your younger years. But in the deeper sense, you still have the capacity for pleasure. For connection. For warmth. And that part of you doesn't become irrelevant with age. It becomes more sacred. That's why talking about masturbation matters. Because silence erases us. Silence tells us that some parts of life expire at a certain age, and that's a lie. And the longer we carry that lie, the more we shrink ourselves, not physically, but spiritually. Emotionally. We stop asking for what we need. We stop claiming our place in conversations that deeply affect our health and happiness. But here's the truth. When you begin to speak openly about this, whether in a conversation with your doctor, a trusted friend, or even in a quiet journal entry, you reclaim something. You reclaim ownership of your body, your story, your needs. You say to the world, I'm not embarrassed by what keeps me whole. And I understand, this doesn't come easy. For many, the fear is real. What will people think? What if I'm judged? What if someone laughs or withdraws? But let me tell you something I've seen over and over again. The moment one person opens up with honesty and vulnerability, others follow. Every time. Because all of us, at every age, are hungry for truth. For someone to say what we've all been too afraid to admit. That touch matters. That pleasure matters. That no one outgrows the need to feel alive in their own skin. I've seen it in support groups. I've seen it in couples therapy. I've seen it in rooms filled with older adults who thought they were the only ones still thinking about these things. And the moment they share, something lifts. The room softens. Shoulders relax. Eyes shine. Because finally, someone said it out loud. And here's what happens when you do, you create space for healing. Not just for yourself, but for others. For your friends who haven't felt seen in years. For your children, who are watching how you age and learning from your courage. For your community, which is starving for models of aging that are honest, dignified, and whole. Imagine this, a group of men in their 60s and 70s having coffee, and instead of only talking about blood pressure and retirement accounts, one of them says, "You know, I've been thinking a lot about touch lately. About how we never talk about what it feels like to lose that. And how I'm learning to reconnect with my own body." That one sentence could change the entire room. Because what we say out loud makes it safe for others to say it too. So how do you start? Start with yourself. Practice saying the words, out loud, in the mirror, if you need to. I touch myself. Not because I'm lonely. Not because I'm stuck in the past. But because I care about my health, my sleep, my peace of mind. Because I deserve to feel comforted. Connected. Alive. Then, find someone you trust. A friend. A partner. A sibling. Maybe even your doctor. Say it simply. I've been learning more about self-pleasure and how it affects emotional health. I never knew how powerful it could be. You don't need to share everything. You don't need to become a spokesperson. But every honest word you speak chips away at the wall of silence. And on the other side of that wall is freedom. Now, I know some people will resist. Some will say, that's private. That's not for polite conversation. But the truth is, we get to decide what's polite. What's respectful. And there is nothing disrespectful about talking honestly about something that improves our health, our well-being, and our quality of life. You've lived too long to be bound by someone else's discomfort. And if you're watching this and thinking, I don't know if I'm ready to speak it out loud, that's okay too. Start by listening. Start by not flinching when the topic comes up. Start by giving yourself permission to feel whatever you feel. And when the time comes, when the moment feels right, you'll know. You'll feel it in your chest. In the steady beat of a heart that's still very much alive. In the warmth that rises when you say the thing you thought no one wanted to hear. And in that moment, you won't just be reclaiming your voice. You'll be inviting others to find theirs. So let me leave you with this. Masturbation is not a taboo. It is not a relic of adolescence. It is not a secret to carry like a burden. It is a practice. A ritual. A quiet, powerful way to stay connected to your body, to your emotions, to your sense of self. And talking about it? That's how we bring it out of the shadows. That's how we stop aging in silence. That's how we model a kind of wholeness that younger generations desperately need to see. Because aging isn't just about decline. It's about depth. And depth requires honesty. If this video gave you something, clarity, hope, courage, then I invite you to take action. Click the like button. Let the algorithm know that these conversations matter. Leave a comment. You don't have to be explicit. Just let someone else reading know that they're not alone. And please, subscribe to this channel. Because there's more to say. More to heal. More life to live, and we're going to walk that path together, with dignity, with honesty, and with the full truth of who we still are. You're not invisible. You're not inappropriate. You're not past your time. You are still here. Still vibrant. Still whole. And it's time the world heard you.